Hey friends, welcome back. Today I have a book review for you for The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. And I have to be honest with you, I'm not really that into YA contemporary realistic romance. It's just not really my thing right now because I'm 24 and I'm married, and I usually like my YA contemporary romance with a little bit of like fantasy, sci-fi, historical, something like that, more sex. Just kidding, mom. Anyway, so that's kind of the thing I usually go for. The Upside of Unrequited's not really in the genres that I read right now, but I really enjoyed it anyway. So let's dive into my thoughts. Roll the intro. Even though contemporary YA realistic romance isn't really my genre right now, it's something I really enjoyed when I was a teenager. And I think looking back on that, the reason that it was so important to me was because YA romances are full of hope. They're full of the sweet, silly sappiness that comes with being a teenager in love. And that's something that you can definitely find in books like The Upside of Unrequited, which is partially why I loved it so much, although it was easy on the sappiness. It wasn't over the top in that sense. It was just a fun read. Becky Albertalli is the author of the book Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, which I'm also really excited to read too. Starting with the protagonist of this novel, Molly Peskin-Suso is a delight to read about. She has a really strong, funny inner voice, but it's great because you're getting these inner thoughts from her that she's not saying on the outside. So you understand that she has strong opinions about everything that's going on, and she's talented and funny and awesome, but she's not actually vocalizing any of those things. She has a twin sister named Cassie who actually kind of does most of the talking for them. She's not overbearing, she's just the loud one. So you have Cassie, who's confident and attractive and everyone's into her, and then you have Molly, who's a little bit more withdrawn, pretty insecure about herself, but I think that's what makes her realistic, to me at least, as a reader. So reading about her is fun because I completely understand what she's going through. You know, as a teenager, back when that was a thing for me, I know that I felt exactly the same way that she did a lot of the time, you know, overshadowed by the people that I thought were more attractive than me, like everybody was in on a joke or in on a party that I wasn't part of. And so I think that makes her a really relatable protagonist for the reader. I think that my number one favorite thing about this book, though, is the fact that Molly is fat. So we learn this from the very beginning. We know that she's a bigger girl and that she's insecure about that. But the thing is, the book treats Molly's weight differently than Molly treats it herself. So Molly finds it to be something that she wants to get rid of, something that she doesn't like about herself. And she thinks that it's kind of the source of a lot of her problems. But the novel in and of itself doesn't treat it that way, which is awesome because at the end of the book, we don't have this girl who went through a big makeover and suddenly got hot, or a girl that lost a ton of weight and then suddenly all the boys are into her. That's not the way that this novel goes about treating the weight issue. So it's great because it doesn't treat it like an issue at all. It treats it just like something that people every single day deal with. So Molly is just a teenager who's a little bit overweight, a little insecure about it, but it doesn't change her life. It doesn't make her life horrible or awful. She just accepts that about herself and doesn't dwell on it constantly, and neither does the book. Another thing that I really like about this book is the fact that I feel like Becky Albertalli really understands the way that teenagers deal with the internet right now. So Molly is constantly talking about Pinterest and Facebook and Instagram and BuzzFeed even. She talks about zoning out on BuzzFeed for a while and just like late at night going through pages on the internet, and I just thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it's like. And so many books right now ignore that fact. And it's understandable. It's not always the most interesting thing to read about, but it grounds your book in reality when you can add those elements of everyday life that teenagers are dealing with into your book. And Molly talks about using Pinterest to plan her mom's wedding. She talks about, finding out about her sister's relationship on Facebook and things like that, and how hurtful that is. And that's something that all of us have dealt with. You know, seeing something on Facebook that we didn't want to find out on Facebook, you know, that somebody's single or somebody's in a relationship. And so I personally find that extremely relatable and realistic, and it's going to date the book, sure, you know, in 30 years if someone reads that, they're going to be like, what is BuzzFeed? What is Facebook? But I think that it makes it really fun to read for teenagers right now. I have another thing about this book that I think is kind of a pro and a con at the same time, and it's the diversity in the book. And don't get me wrong, I love diversity in books. It's something that I think everybody should be striving for, is to represent more of the general population in their books, because not everybody's the same. And this book does it really well. I mean, you have the LGBTQ community represented, you have different religions, you have different ethnicities in this book, and I think that's wonderful, and it made me so happy to realize that there was a book out there that represented so many things in just one book. I love that about it. What I didn't love is that the author was kind of shoving it in your face the whole time, and I don't mean that in the sense that she was using it to send a message, because I think that she was using it to send a message, but in a good way. What I mean by that is that instead of using her writing and the strengths in her writing, which there are many, instead of using those to tell the story and make us aware of the diversity in her book, she just kind of outright said it constantly. You know, there were points in the story where the main character would just say, and we're the Jewish people who do things like this, making it super obvious that the characters are Jewish. Although it was already obvious that the characters were Jewish because they're using Yiddish language occasionally and because they had a bar mitzvah. And so I don't think that that's something that a strong writer needs to do. Albertalli's writing is strong enough on its own to just represent the characters and their diversity in a realistic way that just makes it feel like part of the story. A weak writer is the type of person who might use those moments to make it super obvious and in your face because they don't feel that their writing is strong enough to convey that on its own. That's when a writer isn't trusting their reader enough. And I don't think that Albertalli needs to do that. I think that her writing really is strong enough on its own that we're going to get those messages without her having to spell it out for us. I personally find this a weakness in writing, and I think that she can do without it. Overall, I really enjoyed this book, despite the very minor weaknesses, and when I say weaknesses, there really were very few. The diversity thing was one of those for me, which, as I said already, was more of a strength than a weakness. So in general, there wasn't a lot to not like about this book. I pretty much just loved it. I read it in like a matter of hours because I just couldn't get enough of it. And by the end of it, I just had this huge smile on my face and I was giggling to myself because it portrays young love and the hopefulness there and the sweet, like just silly, tender feelings that you have so well. But it doesn't do it in an overwhelming way that makes you feel kind of annoyed with it, like, oh, this is so sugary and so sweet and so obnoxious. It doesn't feel like that. It just feels like a fun, sweet, wonderful romance for a teenager, and I absolutely loved it. I think that anybody who's looking for something in the contemporary realistic YA romance genre is going to love this book. And I've heard that her other book, Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda, is also really, really great. So if you're looking for something like that, you should definitely check this book out. Thanks so much for listening to me ramble on and on and on about the upside of Unrequited because I loved it so much. Soon I'm going to make some videos to review Swimming Lessons by Claire Fuller, which I got in the Book of the Month box in December. I'm also going to talk about The Possessions by Sarah Flannery Murphy, another book that I got in the Book of the Month box in February. So keep an eye out for those videos. Please like and subscribe and comment telling me if you've read anything by Becky Albertalli. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye. This is my June shelf of the month, and it's a nautical themed, so there's all these blue books and books that have to do with the ocean. And this is my book called How to Sail, but I haven't read it, so I don't know how to sail. And the quote here is, I'll tell you the tale of the bottomless blue from The Little Mermaid. So it's because it's in the ocean. So, and there's shark teeth on here. They're from Destin, Florida. So you can't really see them because they're so tiny. Must be a little baby shark. Like some little baby shark. Baby shark doo doo.